All right. Oh, God.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Good, good.
Oh, Chris, did the yeah.
All right.
Even the beer was like getting into it. It splashed. A big splash, huh?
The beer was doing some
You
over.
gotta show the audience this awesome beer can. I'm sold on the can alone here. Okay, I'm gonna lower. This is like the volume is hot.
Yeah, it is. I can barely hear you. It's been through the loud
Just rocking
rock
so
and roll.
hard.
Turn it down.
Yeah. So like, let's see this like super psychedelic can situation.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Fresh.
Fresh.
New England IPA. Fresh.
Fresh. I love it. I love it. I'm dying to try it. I think mom and dad are in the house. Hey, mom and dad. Fabulous. We've got some people tuning in. Facebook, YouTube. Fabulous. Piling in, getting ready for a fabulous evening.
Right.
Well, Chris, you're mid-step. But how was your weekend?
My weekend was very nice. It was lovely, beautiful weather. I hung out with some friends and did some hiking.
Ooh.
And yeah, some mowing the lawn,
Mowing the lawn.
things like that, you know.
Nice, a nice summery weekend.
Right.
You know, it's a good thing that all of that smoke cleared out in time for us to have a lovely weekend. That was crazy early in the week. How about that?
That was insane, and it was very unpleasant. It was stinky and
Ugh. Oh, it like smelled like a campfire.
unhealthy. I mean, it was also like chemically, you know. It was like
Ugh.
you
Very
know,
dangerous, very unhealthy.
yeah. It was like plastic.
Yikes.
It was nasty. Very nasty.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're recovering from your cold, so it was bad for you, especially, you know, people with any kind of asthma or, situations where
Right. Like I've been so shut in since I got back from, my Boston Calling Memorial Day weekend. I got sick immediately real bad. Crazy throat situation, coughing, sneezing. It's been rough and I was on antibiotics and I'm still coughing. My apologies, everyone. If I have a mid-reading cough or, need for a tissue or at hand.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm still getting better. And earlier this week, I was just like, it's going to be about the middle of June and I have like hardly been outside. I've been sick. Now there's crazy smoke everywhere. It was crazy, Chris. But I did have a fun weekend. My little niece came to visit me, who's not so little. She just graduated college, everyone. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So, and she's 21. So we went for a margarita last night. It was a great time. Oh, I also had margaritas today. I'm having a margarita filled weekend. You know what?
Weekend.
I am still a little bit sick, but I had a fun weekend this weekend. I can't complain. Yeah.
Now, where did you go? Where did you take your niece?
We went to Everito's in South Norwalk. We went to the rooftop.
Ooh.
And it was lovely. And, listen, we need to make a little Fumfa gathering there, I think. We need to have some rooftop Ritas together, everybody.
Geez, a rooftop margarita, I think sounds delightful.
It sounds amazing, right?
All right. Well, we got a little Fumfa trivia thing going on this week. We should tell people about too, right?
Yes, we do. Come on out to Nod Hill, our favorite brewery in Ridgefield. We're going to trivia night, just a nice night to hang and hopefully win at trivia. You might win like a beer, cozy, whatever coaster. I mean, the prizes are exciting.
You could win some beer. We last time we did it, we came in third place, which was respectable.
Yeah.
But this time, look out.
Yeah. Watch it, everybody. And we could form a Fumfa team. So you should come out Wednesday night.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be a good time.
Absolutely. Brainiac.
Yeah, and hopefully by then I won't be coughing everywhere. Yeah, anyhow, I promise you, I'm doing much better. But it's 8 o'clock.
All right
And
then.
it's time for our official welcome to Fumfa 130. This is Fairfield Book Prize finalist night 2. And we are super excited to hear from 2 more finalists for the Fairfield Book Prize, Michael Belanger and me. Myself.
Our very own Katie, the Schneiderator Schneider.
The Schneider. Wait, what did you say the other day that was really funny that with my last name?
Oh gosh, I can't remember
I
this.
can't remember either.
I say so many funny things, and they just
he does. He does. We all know it. We all know it. Excuse me. Oh boy. But anyways, it's going to be an incredible night. I'm so excited to share with all of you from my manuscript, Breaking the Fever. And I can't wait to hear from Michael Belanger's manuscript, Grimwell. And last week was incredible. We got to hear from Meg Keishan McGovern and Stacey O'Connor, just really awesome manuscripts. And it's always wonderful to hang out with our Fumfa friends. It's wonderful to celebrate their incredible work, and just to it's exciting to get to share. So it's a real treat, to that we get to do this and present our ourselves and our dear friends to you. Who are in the running for this awesome prize. But anyhow, Chris, before we get into our readings tonight, what do we have coming up?
Well, next week for Fumfa number 131, that's a week from tonight on the 18th, we have Sandra Marchetti and Maya Rose, 2 fabulous, I'm not sure, is Sandra a poet?
I believe so.
Maya Rose.
But we are excited to hear from her. She reached out to us. We've been looking forward to this date.
I think she may be
Maya poet.
Poets. We have an evening of poems next week, and then the following weekend we have our open mic in person on the 23rd of June. So we'll be ringing in summer. And
Woo!
We've got a whole gang coming in from the Bronx. Ron Mark Thompson, Eric Rosenbaum, and Dara Kalima.
Woo-woo!
Our friend Ben Grossberg, who I believe is in the Hartford area.
Yeah.
He teaches over there. So I'm thinking from there, but that's going to be an incredible evening. And then
don't miss out, peeps.
And don't miss out. And then we're off. We're off for the 4th of July holidays, and then we'll be back on the 9th of July. And we're going to this summer we're going to be revisiting some old friends.
Remix.
And that first night, it's going to be pretty amazing. We're going to have great Tommy Hahn, Matthew Hamilton, Colin Halloran, and David Fitzpatrick. Four
awesome writers, Fumfa alum friends, multi-published people. We haven't, had them on the show in a minute. We can't wait to catch up and hear what they have to share with us. And that's what we're doing this summer. We're doing kind of a remix, rewind, returning readers, sharing, what's been going on with them. So we're really pumped for that. Come on down, people, to Eco Evolution on June 23rd. If you just want to listen and hang out, if you want to sign up, and if you're like, these events are so super cool, and I sort of live in this area and I want to be a feature, let us know. We would love to feature you in our in-person open mic and, have you share with us, and also just bring all your family and friends. It's becoming a thing and it's a great time. So we
get full houses. We get super supportive gang of folks.
Yeah.
A motley crew of poets and fiction
Local creatives,
writers,
writers, comedians, musicians, parlor trick dudes.
magicians, a little bit of everything. It's pretty
Yeah.
wild. It's pretty
It
wild.
is really, really awesome. I just want to say hey to Deb Carr out there in the chat. I'm seeing Deb Carr. I'm seeing Karen. Hey, Karen. Good to see you. Welcome everybody watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, even though we can't see your comments on Twitter. We hope that you enjoy this fabulous evening, hearing from two more of the book prize finalists. And Chris, I think it's time for you to introduce me.
Well, yes. Who's the first reader tonight? Oh, that's.
Oh, I don't know.
No, the Catherine E. What's the E stand for? Elizabeth?
Ellen.
Ellen. Catherine
Yes.
Ellen Schneider.
Yes.
How about that? Well, let's hear about Catherine Ellen Schneider. Catherine Ellen Schneider, aka the Schneiderator, is a poet living in Norwalk, Connecticut. She holds an MFA from where else? Fairfield University, the MFA program, where she worked closely with the great Baron Wormser and the great Dr. Kim Bridgeford. She has also obtained an MA in TESOL and taught adult ESL in the greater New York City area for 10 years before obtaining a third master's degree. This is recent.
I'm in so much debt, everyone. Please buy my book.
She's a 3-time MFA or master's person. So she's smarter than me times 3. Being an active participant in creative community is important to Catherine. She's co-founded and of course she co-hosts this online literary live stream that you're watching right now with me, and with whom she also organizes monthly in-person open mics at Eco Evolution, which we were just talking about. Katie's first chapbook, I used to remember, The Story of How, was published by Finishing Line Press back in 2019. Seems like yesterday. Her publication credits for individual poems include Ruminate, Blue Line, The Poetry Porch, The Paddock Review, Collateral, and the upcoming 2023 Connecticut Literary Anthology. Her poem, Breath, was a nominee for a Pushcart Prize, and her latest manuscript, Breaking the Fever, is a finalist for the Fairfield Book Prize, which is the whole reason why we're here tonight. Katie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in. This is such a treat to get to share with you tonight. My manuscript, Breaking the Fever, is my first book-length manuscript. Many of you may know I have a chapbook out there called I Used to Remember the Story of How. I hope you have a copy and have had a chance to read it. Those who have read it can see in those poems love and longing, both romantic and divine. There is also a palpable innocence, grace, and vulnerability. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of my new manuscript, though, is how it documents injustice, betrayal, and heartbreak that pushes that innocence, grace, and vulnerability to painful and transformational breaking points. It's a manuscript in 4 sections. Break Down the Door, Save Me, Foreign in That Place, and Broken Glory. The first speaks to longing. The second speaks to facing injustice. The third speaks to disillusionment and change. And the final one speaks to a return to grace. I hope you can feel and identify with these poems, with scenes from apartments in Connecticut to the ancient ruins and contemporary cities of Palestine and the Holy Land, from Trump's COVID America to our inner and outer experiences of healing and Renaissance. So I'll read the selected poems in the order that they appear in the manuscripts. You can try to feel that arc. You may never have heard some of these poems, or perhaps you have heard some of them in previous readings. Either way, I hope you hear or discover some favorites. We'll get started in the Holy Land with the poem that kicks off the manuscript before the first section. And this poem is called City on a Hill. There is an epigraph from Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. I am a city on a hill. I know what Jesus meant. I saw it myself. I saw the cities on the hills in the Holy Land. Out of the terminal, into the van, we drove through the night, Israeli street to Palestine. I saw the cities on the hills. They sparkled in the black ore of the crisp January sky, exposed, twinkling, bright. I am a city on a hill, eyes fixed to the window. And when we crossed the army guarded checkpoint into the town, the scene came more to life. Christmas decorations strung up across the streets, parallel parking, car beeps. I swear I saw a man riding a horse inexplicably. The driver made friends with me. He stopped to buy kunafa. We ate it as he drove with sticky fingers. And there I was, in a hotel in Bethlehem, moved from a basic room to one with a balcony. I could see out from inside the city. Each day I looked out, I walked around the ancient places and the newly built. I thought about what it means to be a city and a light. And what are all these structures and things except dust not yet pounded out? And what really matters except the lives of the people who live now? And if this was the longitude and latitude where Christ was born and is no more, then ours are the mortal bodies that hold the holy wisdom and the option to conjure life with its power. People are the only holy cities, the contrast in the silent night. We are the living truth cast on the screen of time. Thank you so much. And now we get into the first section called Break Down the Door, with a slightly lighter poem called Mostly I Want a Man. Mostly I want a man. I'm embarrassed when I say this. But what I mean is I want a best friend who is a man who loves me. I'm embarrassed when I say this. And what I mean by this is that he listens to me, that he wants to listen to me for whole train rides worth of time, for whole boomy, echoing nights. I'm embarrassed when I say this. Come find me, please want to find me, I say soundlessly to no one, wishing above the electric hum of tracks. The next poem is sort of honoring a request from Chris, even though I plan to read it. He's like, Katie, read one of those spicy poems. So this is one of my only spicy poems that exists. It has two titles. It's called From Isolation.
Ice.
Thank you, Chris. That was hilarious. Okay, so it's called From Isolation and Sidelight. We wrote so many times in messages illuminating screens, our fantasy, our dream. I'd straddle his lap, touch his beard in the sidelight, and he'd kiss me. We'd find our own current caressing and rising, slow falling, unwinding, merging shadows, humming, gliding, honeycomb in the night, so deep the trance together in our minds. Lord, let the signal find the satellite. A little bit of COVID texting, if you know what I mean. Okay. Anyhow, on to the next one. We're moving a little bit from sexy longing to sort of frustrated and heartbroken longing in this next one. This is one of my favorites, and I think some people really like this one out there. It's called Maximum Capacity. Your maximum capacity isn't enough for me. Have you ever heard of codependency? I will pour myself into your wounds, lift you up, part the seas. But when my heart longs to receive, you offer a gesture and say, that is my maximum capacity. Not enough for me, not enough for me. There was a new man. A garden bloomed from me at the honey of his words, his attention, his gaze. I am here to be known. Come, welcome to the banquet of all I hold to share. Warm in the sunlight till he turned away to someone else. He'd had enough of me. Not enough for me, not enough for me. I walked 100 blocks in heels from the upper to the lower east side, searching for a new home, begging for his time. He's at maximum capacity, too tired, going home. Not enough for me. My feet are all blisters, chest and back caked with sweat, sore shins, one more subway. I don't want to go home. I don't want to be alone. Not enough for me. Drown me in strangers. Give me more stares. Speak to me, please. Answer me. Meet with me. Share with me. Stay with me. Play with me. Smile at me. Hug me. Hold me. Love me. Stay with me. Match my capacity. I have so much energy, unabashed affection, honesty. You run from me. Your crumbs are not enough for me. Not enough for me. I am the street, I am the sky, I am looking at you from everything you didn't try, from all the places one step ahead, from all the cities you haven't been yet. The words patience and never, what can they mean? All your no's and not nows and silence make me scream rage at your maximum capacity. I have no boundaries. I move in all directions. I never said it was healthy. But doing the same old thing, going to bed at 9, keeping routines, everything familiar at all costs easy will never be enough for me. Be who you are. I'll be who I'll be, a million times outgrowing your maximum capacity. My desire, my passion, as big as the sun, as overwhelming. Keep moving, keep growing, keep going, and the pace will be enough for me. Honoring the fire will be enough for me. Chasing and feeding my maximum capacity. All right, thank you so much. The next poems that I'm going to read are in the next section called Save Me. And this poem refers to a Bible verse that comes right before the one about the city on a hill about salt. It's a very short poem. It's called Salt. You are the only salt in the world. If you lose your flavor, you are not salt anymore. You are useless. A little harsh. But that's my paraphrase of that Bible verse. Interesting to think about. Next poem is called Prayer at 32. Save me from the sin of what I thought I knew before. Save me from the sin of what I thought was true before. Save me from the sin of what I believed was right before. Forgive me for the pain of those I hurt in ignorance before. Save me from the demagogue. Save me from the God of war. Save me from the charlatans who swindled me before. Save me from the Pharisees, the tyrants, and the priests. Save me from the influence of every sheep-clothed beast. Raise me with the little ones, raise me with the weak, raise me with the gentle ones, the injured and the meek. Tell those snakes we rise above their violence and control. Tell their mob the torch and pitchfork cannot pierce our souls. Yeah. From the winter evening woods. Now at twilight in the snow-covered woods, every inch of the ground a sparkling white blue, follow the silence to the last you heard from the acquaintances who prayed for you. Was it prayer you'd needed or just warmth, fellowship with soothing, steadfast, true? Until the fall of many icons, you couldn't comprehend a dissenting view. You'd heeded predator apologists, bully pastors. You sang with insurrectionists before you knew. Back then, they were just Christians, huddled, embracing, speaking wishes to God in the night for you. You'll miss the warmth, not hypocrisy, judgment, or shame. The freedom here outside is cold and new. Pity. How could you hurt me? I have been so kind. I winced and on my face said, take pity. I wove a quilt. I warmed you. You moved me. Took, but gave nothing, not even pity. I have spent my life soft, speaking gently, deferring, relying on your pity. I have looked you in the eye, thou monsters, who consumed me without thanks or pity. There is no art, there is no subtlety in the narcissist. He laughs at pity. There is no shame, no self-effacing change in the bully who reigns, banning pity. What kind of animal are these cruel ones, so proud not to be kind or have pity? From the time they met me, rejected me, ridiculed and used me without pity. And they will be the ones who seem to win, and dazzled masses will forsake pity. Worship a fat cat savior, slick and snide, hate neighbors, deride the poor, no pity. The beaten, sad Jesus said love, mercy. They scoffed, man up, I don't need your pity. There's no safe place here for a tender soul. Hold up your own light, don't expect pity. Well, it's been very satisfying these past few days watching that fat cat savior get some serious consequences. Let's all hope he goes to jail forever. You know who I'm talking about. Okay, this next poem is called Jerusalem. The old city was a place I somehow already knew in past lives, from fever dreams, from Bible reading imaginings. Jesus' feet were here, exactly here. Is this excitement a wisp of holy magic between the Ottoman walls for me? Who am I here on a Sabbath day? An extra in a gospel film? A passerby on Middle East news, Dome of the Rock in the background? What is the sound of my American sneakers on the weary stones? All I know is a paradoxical wonder, how overwhelmingly unworthy we are to be here in the midst of unquantifiable history, the palpable injustice of all the blood spilled here. None of us are worthy of the expense it took to bring us here by air, through checkpoints, past soldiers with guns where others cannot go, so we can fantasize in the actual place, our favorite characters, our religious Disneyland. How many millennia of massacred? How many decades of displaced? How many innocent thrown in prison or shot in the street by the state? How many layers are recorded in the earth of each new kingdom, dominating, pressing down? They show us by demolishing the new life to dig the old one out. Yet, I thought I felt invisible Jesus, understanding and having mercy. He whispered while a tour guide explained the bullet marks in the ancient gate. He stilled my breath at the tomb of David, lascivious man and psalmist king, next door to Palestinian graves on their living families' confiscated property. I heard Jesus repeating what he'd said here before. Forgive them, Lord. They don't know what they are doing. Or do they? This next poem is a reflection on the death of Shadi Hebesh. You may not know who that is. This is a young Egyptian filmmaker who made a music video of a song that was critical of the Egyptian president. He was thrown in jail for 2 years in a maximum security prison without trial, just for making a music video. We can see issues in our country right now where books are getting taken out of schools and where people are, it's becoming illegal for them to be themselves or to get the medical care that they need. We are not so far away from dictatorship and from losing our freedoms. Shadi Habash was in jail for 2 years, and he died in prison. Months before his death, he begged people to advocate for him. And in this letter that he wrote, he said, "Prison doesn't kill, loneliness does. I need your support to not die." And in Egyptian Arabic, I'm going to try my best. I have studied Arabic, but here's my best Egyptian dialect for that same powerful phrases. Prison doesn't kill, loneliness does. I need your support to not die. السجن ما بيموتش بس الوحدة بتموت. أنا محتاج دمكم عشان مموت. My poem is called How Did the Disciples Fall Asleep? How did the disciples fall asleep when Jesus told them, "Stay awake and watch with me"? How did they, in the spring moonlight, close their eyes as the Messiah prayed beside them, weeping blood? I could say they didn't know, couldn't have known the moment they were living in. They didn't know the depth of his anguish, didn't know his death was imminent. Do you bear the guilt of a sleeping disciple? Did you forget your friend who was thrown in prison? Is despotism and imprisonment so normal in your world that you start to ignore it? I would believe you if you said you were afraid and pushed thoughts of him out of your mind, so sure someday he'd emerge at random, released from the tyrant's fist after some time, or finally a trial. I could say you didn't know, couldn't have known the moment you were living in. You didn't know the depth of his anguish, didn't know his death was imminent. You went back to cafes, even laughed, even danced, even lived unforgettable days embracing your whims. Now you cannot let go of the grief, the unbearable weight of all the time and effort you didn't spend staying awake and watching with him. The next poem has two titles, and it's called The Holy Land. It's also called The Occupied Territories. Driving back to Bethlehem on a clear winter night, my memory of it now makes it wider. I returned from a village perched on a hillside, carved with ancient terraces like each hill in the vista, seating homes, holding orchards, each catching sunshine, all living, breathing testaments to the people of Palestine. Now, between the last evening and first morning prayer, I almost forgot occupation was there, that man-made oppression's hideous gears were churning under distant stars of the sky, among the silent narrow roads and green minaret lights. I watched the twists and turns, ascending, descending, so many stone buildings with people dreaming inside. I almost forgot at that time that tucked into the shadows of the land were the cold cenotaphs and apathetic bones of patriarchs in their hallowed crypts, bare to air ruins of emperors and kings, the lingering echoes of prophets' warnings. Somewhere crushed to powder was the broken jar of perfume, the landing place of Jesus' tears, the execution site, the empty tomb. The last poem in this section is called Dead Star. Amidst long shadows, high ceilings, empty corners, shelving, heavy dishes, new apartment, I live alone. Not long ago, we were there, dense matter in the same home, the leaving, chemical burn, massive hole. All right. The next poems I'm going to share are from the section called Foreign in That Place. And this is the last poem I'm going to share from, from scenes of the Holy Land in Palestine. It's called Manger Square. There are a few words you need to know. Sahat al-Mahd is the Arabic name for Manger Square, where the Church of the Nativity is and where the Mosque of Omar is in Bethlehem. Injil is New Testament. That's the Arabic word for gospel or New Testament. And sujood is the bowing in Muslim prayer. So this poem is called Manger Square. The hall of the hotel had motion lights. I stepped out of the elevator into darkness for a moment, and it felt right, as if I'd stepped into the world of my closed eyes. What did I come to Palestine to find? Your father couldn't convert me, though he tried. When he drove me back that night, I had watched your family pray in your living room. I was alien with each sujood. Heads down to the floor, a waveform echoed across your holy home. I think they thought I would be your wife. No, just a friend. I answered the unspoken question. A friend who watched you pray in New York in ragged rented rooms, the movements just as smooth as I sat with my Injil, foreign to my former self and foreign in that place. We are Sahat al-Mahd in Bethlehem, where you can see the Church of the Nativity across from the Mosque of Omar. Like our friendship, like you and me, watching out for each other across the square, accepting that we are different fundamentally. I'm so sorry. All right, so we're not going to have any more sad poems now. We're moving to the last section, which, like I said, is a return to grace. And the section is called Broken Glory. This poem is called Today. I'm sorry. I also need these for my nose and my coughing anyhow. All right. So I have this poem and just one more little one, and I swear I will wrap up roughly on time. This poem is called Today. You looked up from your sulking and felt a change. You said, today isn't about pain. Look, death is defeated again. You've opened up your eyes, and the earth turns to the sun, which is waking the blue trail of night. Things begin again. The buses snort to life, and each red lit exit sign glows fainter as lights flick on in restaurants and the sun glints off the breakfast silverware. And my very last poem of the evening is going to be Micah, which has the words in it that are the title of this section, Broken Glory. Micah. Fragments of mica shimmer in the forest on the steep side of a hill. Paper-thin flecks of it shine in the sun, translucent insect wings. You dig out the biggest pieces, layered ones edged with dirt, and hold them out in your hands like precious shards of broken glory. Thank you so much for listening to me. Woo!
Woo!
Woo! Oh my God, Chris!
I can't do the Katie whoop.
All right, hold on. Let me get. Woo! Oh my goodness, Chris! I've never had a tear before.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic! I love it, but it's beautiful when that happens.
But you know what?
Right.
I totally agree. I remember I had we had a little moment of emotion in Rebecca Dimian's reading, which was so powerful and so beautiful. And I mean, certainly in other readings where maybe the reader didn't have a moment of tears, but like the reading was so powerful that I had some tears back here, and I was like, oh my God.
You're always tearing up when people read their stuff, especially poetry. Yeah, that's okay. That's totally cool.
Thank you so much, Chris.
That was beautiful, Katie, and congratulations on this.
Thank you.
Book, and I know we're going to get to Mike, but I just want to say the title, Breaking the Fever.
Breaking the Fever.
So where does this come from? What does it mean? Tell us why you chose that as the title of this.
Oh, Chris, that is such a cool question. Really, oh goodness, my poor nose here. But because I'm still like getting over this cold, so it doesn't need much encouragement, to start running.
It's good.
But Breaking the Fever. It's kind of all about being so intensely affected by these things that are confronting you, injustices, the need for reconsidering your religion and having an experience of religious deconstruction. It's about coming to this breaking point where it's just like, you know what? I can't think the same anymore. Things in the world are pushing things to this breaking point. And I think Breaking the Fever, that's when you kind of, you turn to healing, right? It's like this intense moment, when you're sick, but it also means that you've turned this corner. And so I think the manuscript documents these kind of pushes to the breaking point regarding heartbreak, regarding injustice, regarding really seeing things in a different way, realizing that maybe certain relationships, certain situations, even just certain events that are happening nationally, internationally, are just not going to go the way you would have wished. But in facing that, and really speaking to that and kind of realizing your need for justice and your own self-worth in those situations is breaking the fever. Like, life is going to throw you all kinds of crazy stuff, but you have to face it, and you have to stick up for yourself. You have to stick up for what is right in general. And I think, in my first manuscript, I have a lot of poems that are based in biblical narratives. I kind of come out of many, many years of being like very much an evangelical Christian. And, how do you remain in that state of being when you're watching the injustices in the world, and when you're seeing that, 80% of evangelical Americans voted for someone like Trump? It changes you. Me teaching and having close contact with so many students from the Middle East, myself learning Arabic and really trying to understand more about people who are very different from me, and the Holy Land and the issues that are there. Also being very close to a Palestinian friend really changed the whole way I viewed the Holy Land as a Christian person. And so, it's kind of the realization of all of these all of these things, and getting through them, and moving forward, not being afraid to face it, and also not being afraid to do something about it.
All
So
right.
that's where it is for me. We need
Okay.
to, but thank you so much for that fabulous question, Chris. I could go on and on, as you know.
A fabulous answer, and it's a catchy title too. Breaking the Fever. I think.
I think it's very cool and very intense.
Yes, it is. It
It
is.
is appropriately intense.
That's right. So,
Yes.
all right.
We
Now,
need to welcome our second
that's right.
finalist of the evening. You know, we get started with poetry first. We are so excited to welcome back our friend and Fumfa colleague, Michael Belanger. Hey, Mike.
There he is.
Hey guys.
How you doing this evening,
Great.
Michael?
Katie, that was just beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. Thank you. Really, really thank you. And thank you so much to the audience. I'm seeing some of these comments now that it really means so much. And Michael, we are so excited to hear from Grimwell. But let me introduce you with your bio. Michael Belanger is an author and high school history teacher. His debut novel, The History of Jane Doe, was a finalist for the Connecticut Book Award. Awesome. And received a Kirkus Starred review. Whoop, whoop. More recently, his writing has appeared in Flash Fiction Magazine, Pigeon Review, Bright Flash Literary Review, and is forthcoming in the 2023 Connecticut Literary Anthology.
All right.
In addition to teaching and writing, he serves as a faculty advisor to Greenwich, a high school literary magazine that has published talented young writers, including Truman Capote, for over 100 years. That is so cool. He lives in Connecticut with his wife, son, and two wonderfully aloof cats. That's funny. All right, Michael, take it away.
Thank you so much. I also just have to give a shout out to Chris Belden, who I workshopped this novel with, as I've workshopped many of my novels with. So thank you, as always, to Chris Belden for the incredible feedback. So I'm going to read right from the beginning of my novel, Grimwell. It's a fantasy novel, and I'll just let the novel speak for itself. So I'm going to start right at chapter 1. Everyone has a book written just for them. The trick is finding it. Derek Winnebaker found his book in the back corner of a supply closet, nestled between an ancient coffee pot and a stack of books about the future of US-Soviet relations. He'd been looking for chocolate syrup to make a mocha latte for a customer. He blew a puff of air on the cover and dust cascaded off, revealing a simple graphic. A man with a slight frame, large ears, and a tail, holding what looked to be a glowing red amulet in his hands. Above him, the name of the book and its author were printed in an ornate script, The Strange Life and Times of Eldred Babel, by Chester Felton. Derek ran his fingers across the plastic dust jacket and thumbed through the mildewed pages, long ago damaged by a flood or leaky pipe. On the inside cover, he found a Pemberton Library borrowing card, suspiciously blank. Apparently, the book had never been checked out. He scanned the back cover, growing more and more curious. He felt a pull to read the book, as if he'd been searching and scouring shelves, just waiting to find Eldred's story. "Everything okay back there?" his boss Sam shouted, but for Derek, it felt near and distant at the same time. He fumbled nervously with the book and found himself once again fanning the pages, feeling the cool air on his face. Beneath the glare of the supply closet's lone overhanging bulb, its metal pull chain attached to a coffee cup pendant, he read the back cover. Dear reader, welcome to Grimwell, a magical land of trolls, sorcerers, and of course, Grimkins. Grimkins have managed to keep a low profile in the tales and yore of the past owing to their cat-like agility and excellent sense of smell. In fact, only one mention of Grimkins can be found in history, a brief sighting in the 18th century of a Grimkin named Brigglebog Bramble, whose tail was spotted at the military encampment of General George Washington. But it's time for Grimkin's long run of obscurity to end, for Mr. Eldred Babel is about to embark on an adventure quite out of character for the unsung Grimkin, who prefers to be home building small-scale replicas of famous buildings, or playing a solitary game of fizzle, an even more complicated version of chess. After being given a magical amulet that spreads darkness all throughout Grimwell, Eldred Babel leaves the cozy little village of Crimpleton to break Lord Griddlebrain's curse. Along the way, he'll meet Chester Felton, the author of this book, who accidentally stumbles into the world of Grimwell during a fortuitous walk through the woods. Grimwell can be found under a tree stump in the Ashton Town Forest, a land easy to trip over but almost impossible to leave. If you follow these pages to the end, you'll encounter giants, a ferocious beast called a brimble, and talking trees. If you cross a talking tree's path, please approach with caution. They're starved for company. Maybe you'll even see yourself in the strange customs and wares of this magical land, as well as its many colorful characters, including Eldred Babble, his love interest Belinda Grabbleby, the wise and loquacious grandfather tree, or perhaps there is a page for everyone after all, a goblin or sorcerer. Chester Felton is a World War II veteran, insurance salesman, and ambassador to the world of Grimwell. After telling the story of Grimwell to friends and family at the Ashton Town picnic, he was encouraged to write the tale down so that others might learn of this remarkable land. This is his first novel. Sam was knocking at the door, giving Derek just enough time to stash the book behind his back, as if he'd uncovered something illicit. Just a second, Derek called out, grabbing the bottle of syrup and opening the door. You've got a customer, Sam said. We're almost at a mocha, Derek said, still holding the book behind his back. He'd already started to feel an ownership over the strange title. My book. She's getting impatient, Sam said. Aren't they always? Derek asked. We provide a service, Sam said. I'll be right there, Derek said. Derek followed his manager and stashed the book beneath the till before making the impatient customer's drink. This job was supposed to have been a brief detour after college until he went to grad school. He dreamed of many different lives for himself: a philosopher speculating on the nature of man, an archaeologist scouring the world for ancient treasures, a doctor treating and curing some of the world's worst diseases. Derek didn't know if doctors had groupies, but in his daydreams they did. But in the end, there had simply been too many choices, and Derek had been unable to take that first step in the direction of a career. Career. The words sounded too final, a choice set in stone, a book already written. Without a clear direction, or simply too many directions, he got a job at the Reed and Bean coffee shop located right in the Pemberton Town Library. His ex, Janine, had called him my little barista. Did I order decaf? The customer asked after Derek placed her drink on the bar. Unfortunately, he couldn't remember. He was usually on autopilot at the coffee shop. The same feeling as driving a car on a desolate stretch of highway only to realize 20 miles have passed without having bothered to take in the scenery. Derek squinted at the customer. She had her hair pulled back in a bun, not a strand out of place. Lipstick perfectly applied, red and angry against her pale skin. Most likely an executive, making decisions in boardrooms, firing people, taking long lunches before returning to the office. It should be on the cup, Derek said, pointing at the side where he'd written her name, Christina, and checked the decaf box for her triple almond milk, 180-degree no foam mocha latte. I know, but did I order decaf? If it's on the cup, no, she said. I don't care if he's on vacation with his family. It took Derek a minute to realize she had earbuds in, dueling conversations. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with a situation. Derek smiled. No worries. The guy at the coffee shop is being dense. Derek's smile disappeared. Could you make me a new one? She threw a quarter in the tip jar. Derek sighed. He was finding it more and more difficult to be polite to customers. Still, despite the customer's surly manner, Derek noticed the dark bags under her eyes. That singular look of stress and exhaustion that accompanied the need for caffeine. Maybe she'd been up late with a newborn, or fighting with a significant other, or maybe she was just battling insomnia. Or, Derek thought as he steamed her milk, which Derek always thought sounded like a euphemism, maybe she worked in the FBI and was on the hunt for a serial killer who had left clues in coffee shops all across the country. Derek often invented backstories for the customers to keep himself busy and to tamp down the frustration. After all, it was hard to be mad at an FBI agent on the hunt for a serial killer. In another world, another book perhaps, Derek and the woman might even team up, traipsing through the pages as an unlikely pair, the barista and the agent. Only he wouldn't be called my little barista in this version. Take that, Janine. He'd be Special Agent Barista. Too late, he realized he had already read a similar book, Only instead of a barista, it was a bartender named Jack and a CIA agent with the last name Coke, located in the thriller section. Derek couldn't remember the title. Hello? Sorry, Derek said, once again coming back from autopilot and finishing her drink. She grabbed the coffee and raised her eyebrows, not bothering to say thanks. You're welcome, Derek couldn't help but call after her. The library was located on Pemberton's main strip, and the coffee shop could be found on the ground floor facing the street. Floor to ceiling windows had been installed to lure people away from Starbucks with its grand views of Elm Street. And so Derek often got the feeling that he was in a zoo, an oddity to be ogled at by passersby. From his spot at the till, he had a perfect view of the fiction section on the ground floor and the nonfiction section on the second floor, the shelves lined up like intricately etched dominoes. The ceiling sloped down over the coffee shop, and a series of bright globes hung from wooden rafters, as if replicating a solar system in a distant galaxy. The dividing line between art and commerce, or coffee and books, lines which often blurred in the course of a day, was the end of a blue nylon rug and the beginning of checkered red and white tile, the Bean's colors. Since he first began working at the Bean, both the library and the coffee shop had gone through some major renovations, which is why some of the old books had been haphazardly stored in the Bean's coffee closet. All things considered, it wasn't a terrible job, and because the store was part of the library, Derek had access to as many books as he wanted, a perfect excuse to explore the many different lives he wasn't living himself. At first, he stuck to the philosophy section, reading abstruse Kant and Nietzsche, the English philosophers with their rigid certainty, before finally finishing Right in America with freewheeling William James. Still, his learning hadn't gotten him anything beyond a few interesting tidbits to share with customers during the morning rush. Nothing wakes people up like a walk through the history of nihilism. Next, he branched off into fiction, first focusing on the classics, then reading the Book of the Month Club picks, including the previously mentioned Jack and Coke. The title had come to him while watching the surly customer walk away. As of late, he'd been in the home and garden section, learning all about bulbs and seeds and the best climate to grow echinacea. He didn't think he'd ever actually grow echinacea, but he liked knowing he could. He liked knowing things, period. So when he found the old and tattered book about a strange creature called a Grimkin, he happily stashed it in his backpack, looking forward to reading it when he returned home from his shift. Derek lived in a studio apartment right above a bar named McDowell's. Studio was a generous description for the 10 by 10 box Derek called home. Derek suspected the landlord had gotten away with renting out an old supply closet by making a few haphazard renovations and adding a small window. Still, the apartment was just barely affordable on Derek's hourly wages. It fit a couch that turned into a sleeper, a small flat screen TV shoved up against the wall, a coat rack that had been his parents', and a coffee table that doubled as his kitchen table. Despite the size, he did have his own bathroom, which was more than Derek could say for some of the other apartments on the market. He also had room for not one, but two hot plates. He had yet to use either. Derek thought living above a bar would make meeting people easier, as he hadn't really had much of a social life ever since Janine left. Janine had gotten the apartment, which Derek couldn't afford anyway, the dog, a Shih Tzu named Ron, and all their friends. True, they had been Janine's friends from law school, but he had tricked himself into believing they'd become part of his life too. As he usually did on Friday nights, Derek tucked a book into his jacket pocket. That night it was The Strange Life and Times of Eldred Babel, and went down to McDowell's for dinner, where he dreamed of being greeted like a regular. Derek, they would all shout as he walked in. Have you met Derek? Someone might say. He's the lead geneticist on the Human Genome Project. Derek didn't know where that last fantasy came from, most likely from a book. He'd worked through the general science section about 2 years ago, just before the breakup, at which point he abruptly switched to self help. Regardless, deep down, he still believed he was destined for greatness, that beneath his average exterior lay the thumping heart of a hero. Instead of shouts and accolades as he entered McDowell's, Derek found himself on the receiving end of a tepid wave from Julius, the bartender, whose day job appeared to be bodybuilder. Derek's sitcom life wasn't materializing. You're too in your own head, Janine had told him. You have no motivation, she'd added. I'm just looking for someone with more of a sense of adventure. Maybe she was right. The restaurant was busy. each shiny lacquer table occupied. Derek spotted a lone stool at the bar, right beneath one of the overhanging lights, his favorite spot. While an Irish pub in name, McDowell's had undergone a fancy makeover, and so the Guinness sign was traded for modernist Rorschach-inspired artwork. Is it a dolphin or a physical representation of unresolved issues with my dad? Derek had wondered. The old chalkboard swapped out for mirrors, and the sticky floor had been replaced with a shiny reflective tile that made you feel like you were walking across thin ice. Luckily, the bar was still dingy and dim, somewhere between a cave and candlelit. Derek sat down at the bar and Julius slid a menu toward him, not bothering to say anything. Julius's bulging muscles pressed against his skin-tight black t-shirt, practically rippling. With a bald head and hoop earring, he seemed to be actively emulating Mr. Clean, at least in appearance. No way was Mr. Clean such a jerk. Hi, Julius. Julius grunted in return. On Derek's right, there was Boris, a retired agent, most likely real estate, and Gerald, a semi-retired town works employee. They ate at the bar every night, usually on either side of him. For some reason, they needed a buffer seat in between, as if afraid to fully commit to their friendship. Both of their wives had died a few years ago, and they'd been thrown unwillingly into bachelorhood again. What are you reading? Boris asked, his mustache wiggling as he spoke. He had a habit of cupping his beer belly as if cradling a baby. The Strange Life and Times of Eldred Babel, Derek said nonchalantly, as if announcing the latest bestseller. He looked down at the cover, scrutinizing the strange creature holding a glowing red amulet. He'd been growing more and more curious about the book ever since he left the Bean. Something strange about the cover and the fact that it had been hidden in the back of the supply closet, as if forbidden. As he opened the book to the title page, he noticed something he hadn't seen when holding the book in the Bean supply closet. A stamp that read, "From the personal library of Jackson Wilfred." Jackson Wilfred had been the director of the library before Derek started working at the Bean. Known for turning Pemberton's small-town library into a world-class institution, he had left his post just before the renovations began. Never heard of it, Gerald said. While Boris was short and portly, Gerald was tall and lanky. Similar to an avatar in a video game, he appeared to only have one look, jeans and a tucked-in t-shirt about being a grandpa. Today's shirt featured the message, "This is what an awesome grandpa looks like." Strangely, Gerald rarely mentioned his grandkids. I'm more of an encyclopedia guy myself. I don't read, Julius said, a hint of resignation in his voice. You need to read a real novelist, Boris said, turning to Derek. Dostoevsky, Chekhov, Pushkin. You're making those names up, Gerald said. Out of the corner of his eye, Derek saw Kat. One of the waitresses approached the bar. Kat was a big part of the reason why Derek ate dinner at McDowell's so often, even when a frozen pizza would have been more economical. Whenever he saw her, he couldn't help but think of his foray into the romance section of the library. Lines describing the sultry sway of hips or the rolling hills of curves, both true in Kat's case. The omnipresent description of hair falling, flowing, or cascading down shoulders. Although Kat usually had her curly brown hair tied in a bun, Derek imagined it would be a deluge if she let it down. And of course, the eyes, always batting, always shining, always deep as the ocean. McDowell's was dim, but Kat's brown eyes did seem to glow, cliche or not. For Derek, Kat made romance fiction seem realer, or if not realer, at least truer, than any other genre. What did we think of the special today? Kat asked, sliding her tray on the bar. Although Kat was a waitress, the owner let her create a special during each shift she worked, which Derek always made sure to order and loudly whenever she was nearby. His approach to flirting. Boris kissed his fingers in a dramatic gesture. Gerald showed his clean plate. One of your best yet, he said. I'll take the ceviche, Derek said to Julius, and a side of fries. Already put your order in, Julius said, Mr. Special and a side of fries. A bit of a departure for me, Kat said. Ceviche is an art, and Julius didn't think our clientele would go for fish. It's not even cooked, Julius said defensively. It's the citrus, Kat said. Is my orange juice cooked, Julius said. Huh? Is it? Ignore this heathen, Boris said. Any pictures of the little guy? Kat had a son around 2 years old, and from what Derek knew, no husband or boyfriend in the picture. Derek wished there was a formal application process for dating. He could really shine on a piece of paper. Kat pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos before showing one of a curly-headed boy going down a slide, smiling wide from ear to ear. Look at him, Boris said. He's going to be an Olympian. An athlete, if I ever saw one, Gerald said. Boris and Gerald turned to Derek, awaiting a response. Look at those cheekbones, Derek said, spitting out the first thing that came to him. Those he gets from his father, Kat said. His brute strength comes from me. Kat curled her bicep. Am I right, Julius? To which Julius pumped his pectorals. Not bad, he said. Show off, Boris said. What are we reading tonight? Kat asked Derek. Derek held up The Strange Life and Times of Eldred Babel, still recovering from his cheekbone comment, not quite ready to speak. No clever dialogue at the ready. Looks interesting, Kat said. He needs to read the Russians, Boris said. Did you know the Russian alphabet has twice as many vowels as English? Gerald said. Is that true? Yep, saw it on my grandson's internet. And twice as many ways to say fuck you, Boris said, laughing loudly at his own joke. Kat drummed her fingers on the bar, waiting for her drinks. And I'm sure you know them all. Derek got the sense that he was watching the scene from far away. He was tired of feeling like a side character in every facet of his life, playing a secondary role at the coffee shop, at the bar, even in his own family, where his brother had somehow become the successful one. He should have listened to his dad and become a lawyer, and not only because Janine had cheated on him with a lawyer in the laundry room of their apartment building. So many books in the self-help section, but nothing approaching how to scrub that particular memory. Maybe then he'd have more money, more prestige, more of a life, more Janine. Silence settled over the bar. Derek didn't know what to say to Kat. She probably had customers hit on her all the time. She was just trying to make a living. But he could imagine a world where he asked her out. He could start with something simple like, how about after work you let me buy you a drink? Or he could offer to perform some sort of manual labor on her home, like installing a door or reshingling her roof. He'd finished most of the books in the home improvement section last week. Or maybe he should just go with his application idea and submit a resume detailing the reasons he'd make a good boyfriend. No, none of those sounded right. He couldn't even get it right in his fantasies. There were just too many possibilities. The world full of blank pages that couldn't be rewritten. So he didn't say anything at all. Still waiting for his food to arrive, he cracked open his book and began reading. Eldred Babel was going on a mission to save the world, though he didn't know it yet. Eldred lived in a large and rather fine hut in the small village of Crimpleton. Like all the huts in Crimpleton, it was made of stone and crowned with a thatched roof of shabberberry bush, one of the most versatile plants in Grimwell. His front window looked out on Crimpleton Common, a bustling area of town filled with stores, food, and games. Eldred preferred to keep his window closed. He wasn't very fond of noise, or other Grimkins, for that matter. What's a Grimkin, you ask? Grimkins live just beyond the veil of our world, hidden from the prying eyes of humans in a land called Grimwell. It was a lucky accident that led me to find them myself. Of course, luck is in the eye of the beholder. But I digress, because I'm part of this story too. However, I didn't meet Eldred until later, soon after his journey had begun. Now, where were we? Eldred Babel, the hero of our tale, had large teeth, oversized ears, even by a Grimkin standards, and stringy hair. He had on black trousers, a white linen shirt, and a maroon vest with a gold pocket watch tucked in his breast pocket. He was sitting on a plush purple couch, admiring his handiwork on a small scale replica of the tallest building in Grimwell, a stone monolith that presided over the capital called the Summit. Only one piece remained, the spiral tip. Like most Grimkins, Eldred loved building miniature models, his way of bringing the world to him without all the hassle of venturing to distant lands and sleeping in inns on uncomfortable shabberberry beds. As he crowned the summit with the final piece, the doorbell rang. He quickly got up, his tail clipping the framed photos on the hutch in the entryway as he hurried to open the door. Most Grimkins are quick and cat-like, but not Eldred. His entire life he'd been called clumsy. Other names too. Grumpy, cowardly, antisocial, even brimpled, which is a very common insult in the land of Grimwell that means unsmiling. Eldred liked to stay at home where everything was just how he liked it. If that made him brimpled, so be it. He spent a long time making sure his hut was just so. Unlike the other huts on his street, with their plain stone fronts and black shutters, Eldred had added a splash of color and painted his door a bright purple, his favorite color, and his shutters a bright blue, his second favorite color. He didn't mind standing out so long as he could stay in. Last year, after receiving one too many visitors, he'd enlisted Friegel, Crimpleton's blacksmith, to forge a sign that read, "Before you knock once, think twice." The 6 words made him smile each time he arrived home. In the front of his hut, he planted a garden with squash, tomatoes, and grimplehoot, a bitter herb that Eldred liked to sprinkle on pretty much everything. He opened the door and saw Mayor Frumple waiting on his stoop, hat in hand. Mayor Frumple was on the larger side of Grimpkin and was occasionally mistaken for a growler, a species of troll that inhabits the northern edges of Grimwell. He always wore a suit, which isn't all that different from the type of suit worn by humans, with the exception of a wide tie that looks more like a bib, and, I'm told, fulfills the same function. Grimkins are notorious for their messy eating habits. His large, shifty eyes seemed to never blink, and his mouth only had two expressions, ecstatic and overjoyed. Rumor had it that no one had ever seen Mayor Frumple frown because he suffered from a rare birth defect that gave his lips a permanent curl. Gradually, at least according to gossip, Mayor Frumple had forgotten the difference between smiling and not smiling. Mr. Babble, Mayor Frumple said, his voice booming as if giving a speech in Crimbleton Common. Mayor Frumple, Eldred said, peering nervously around his door as sunlight splashed his entryway, much to Eldred's dismay. Eldred wasn't all that crazy about sunlight. He sunburned very easily, and he was even less crazy about visitors. I'm just going to door to speak to my constituents, Mayor Frumple said. Of course, Eldred thought. Election season is on the horizon. And you want to be assured you have my vote, am I right? Well, yes, but I also want to make sure I have your trust. His smile deepened, almost as if someone was turning an unseen fulcrum, stretching Mayor Frumple's skin taut. The election was, as Grimkins said, in the hollyhoot, a type of bag worn by Grimkins. The only issue to speak of was whether or not Crimpleton should strengthen their ties to the capital, Grim City. Mayor Frumple had outlined all the potential investment opportunities if they chose to align closer to the capital city, while his challenger, Friegel, had advocated for more independence, even sending around a pamphlet claiming Mayor Frumple was a puppet of Lord Griddlebane, who had recently become the mayor of Grim City. However, Mayor Frumple had much flashier buttons, and buttons mattered in Grimwell elections. Sad, but true. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my plans for the year, if I'm elected, of course. I really don't have time, Eldred said. I'm in the middle of something quite important. That wasn't exactly true. Then again, it all depended on your definition of important. After all, he did have to find a place for the summit, and his shelves were already crowded with other builds, including the Golden Pyramid of Frimington, the shrinking city of Bangaloo, and the treehouse, where the trees met each fall embarked on 3 days of exhausting small talk. The entirety of Grimwell, at least the places worth seeing, all lay right there in Eldred's hut. And then, of course, a mysterious sorcerer will visit soon, and I'll stop there.
Woo! Michael Belanger! Oh my God. So much fun. I want to just hang out with these characters. I need to hear more. I need this manuscript in a book in my hands right now.
Well, I can tell you that this book goes to places that you will never expect. It's just like
It's so fun.
it's like the craziest stuff happens,
Woo!
and we'll talk about it eventually. But the line between what we read and and our own lives breaks down, and it's pretty crazy. I mean,
That is so,
yeah, I
so
mean, Michael, you call it
cool.
fantasy, and I don't think that even. I mean, you know, I guess you have to pick a word, right? A genre, but it
Yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't quite. It doesn't quite work. Right? It's almost like you have to invent another. It's like
I
meta.
love it. I
I don't
love
know
it.
what you call it. It's like
I guess like I didn't want to be pretentious, but I think you could call it a literary fantasy. Like I
I
say it
love
simply
it,
because
actually a
Michael.
really
Yes,
good. I think
yes.
that's a really good way to describe it, and it's because
I don't
it's
think it's pretentious. I think,
no,
yeah,
it's not at all.
literary.
It's
yeah.
because I mean, it's about reading,
Yeah.
and it's about um, fall, in a way, almost literally falling into a book. Um,
I love this.
and it,
I
you know,
love
it's
it.
fantastic.
It's so cool. I mean, I
Um,
just love that bar scene though with the ceviche talk. Oh, it was good.
yeah,
Oh my goodness. Mike, every time you read and every time you share your novels with us, these characters are just so real and they're so much fun. and like you're getting to know the characters, you're feeling for them a bit, you're listening to how funny and relatable they are, and of course we have this like this fantastical turn of things as well, where we're getting into our fantasy land, and it's just so much fun, but it's like also so seamless as well, even though it's like okay, now we're talking about someone with a tail, and just delightful, really really great. Really, really great. Well, it is now time to get into our Q&A time. Get your cues. And I was so engrossed in Michael's reading that I did not, I didn't put in there to get your cues ready for Q&A. So please get your
Yeah.
questions in there for Michael Belanger and myself. And please give another round of applause to Michael Belanger and
And
our other finalists today, and Chris Belden.
Catherine,
Thank you so much, audience.
Mike.
We see all of your amazing comments for me and for Mike. We thank you so much for joining us. Please stick around. And
Now wait a second. Here we're
questions at us.
talking about comments. I want to find my favorite comment right here.
Chris, that's too funny.
That's Katie's mom.
I know, mom was into it. That's hilarious.
She was into that spice.
Woo! Who doesn't like spice? Come on now. That's too funny. All right. Well, Chris, I think, I really want, what we started out with last week was the question of, okay, how did this manuscript emerge?
Yes. And I want to ask you that, and we'll get to Mike after that too, with the same question, more or less. But of course, a manuscript of poetry is probably and often very different from a novel.
Totally.
How does it work? Like, when does it become a collection of poetry? Because you're writing poems, right? It's almost like maybe an album, or of music, or stories. Somebody's writing stories, and like, okay, at what point do you say to yourself, oh, okay, this is a collection, and then do you write towards that collection, or you just keep writing individual poems, and some of them make it in and some of them don't? It's just like, how does that process go?
Chris, that is such an awesome question. And I'm always thinking of, this kind of stuff too, because, I'm like sort of a single genre person. So I'm always approaching our Q&A times and listening to our friends chatting, from the experience of, from the experience of a poet, which is so different. And the whole publishing process is really different too. But anyways, I would say that, I have a lot of faith, sort of non-religious faith in like the spirit moving. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit. I, have this compulsion to write. I will experience different things. I will, hear something that inspires me. I'll experience something. I will have an incredible experience like visiting the Holy Land, right? And I will just start to write, or I will know, like, I must write about this. And so I accumulate a whole bunch of poems, and I start to see, honestly, I do start to see a theme, but this can take a very long time. So I would say, maybe I start out with this idea that, okay, I have this particular project behind me. So I have my chat book behind me. And I've sort of established a certain kind of style, and I know the kinds of things that I write about. And I have an idea of like, all right, this is where I'm growing. This is where I'm going. This next manuscript, I really want to address. And I did kind of set out in some ways to say, I do want to lean into heavier things. I do want to talk about biblical narrative, but I want to juxtapose it with current injustice in the Holy Land, in the same place where these narratives took place. I want to talk about it, next to, political situations and my own personal experiences. And so I think I knew I had an idea of where I wanted to go, and then the poems sort of filled themselves in. And then, kind of a day comes where I'm like, whoa, I think I've written a lot. Now, I'm not recommending this process to everyone because I can't say that this like guarantees that you're producing a book in a certain amount of time. But I sort of have the idea, okay, I think I've written everything I need to write for this theme that is really important to me. And then comes the time where I'm pulling it together, I'm editing, and then I'm seeking someone to do manuscript review with. And for my chapbook, I got to work with Kim Bridgeford, which was incredible. And she passed away in 2020. But for this manuscript, I worked with my other mentor from the MFA, Baron Wormser. And what was so perfect about working with him is that he knows me, he remembers me, he can see that growth. It was such a cool experience. And he really helped me kind of hew it down a little bit and helped me to choose the title. It had a different title before this. And he, I think, picked the title out of one of my poems. And I'm like, it's perfect. That's perfect, Baron. This is exactly what this is about. The previous title I had was like This Holy Land, because it was talking about vulnerability and how the sacred is being damaged on so many levels. And I've even talked about that on the stream before when I read earlier versions of things. And I just thought Breaking the Fever, it's just perfect. And then that's kind of how it emerges for me. So it's a little bit of a focus beforehand, but it's sort of the magic of just knowing when you've written what you've needed to write and knowing when that is done.
But it's also, from what I can tell,
Yeah.
broken into different sections too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
So then it's like, oh, okay, this section, you have to somehow you discern, okay, this group of poems belongs in its own
Yes.
section. This group of poem belongs in its own section. Then you have to, you title the sections and all that stuff. I don't know how much Baron helped you with that process, but
Yeah, I did break them into the sections that I had described, sort of, where we have our really these most intense poems in the middle.
Right.
But he really helped with retitling them in really powerful ways. And each of the titles of the sections come out of a poem
Right.
within that section. So just we all know the value of writing community and having someone to do manuscript review, that like you're going in there and you're like, wow, I feel great about this. And I know as soon as I get that feedback, woo, like it's gonna be just that much better. So I would say it looked roughly the same. I actually had a few more poems. It was a pretty long manuscript. Baron helped me kind of, weed out a few so that we could kind of concentrate the power of each section.
Mhm.
And he helped me retitle 2 of the sections, just pulling straight from the poems. And it was just that little bit of tweaking that just made it go from, okay, this is good, this is powerful, to like, woo, I couldn't, that's it. That's it. Send it out. So,
Well, there's a huge breadth of topics,
yeah,
moods,
true.
tones. I mean, you have spicy, and then you have like very heavy stuff in the Holy Land, and then you have Trump without naming Trump, and kind of poking at that bear, and it's. I mean, you cover a lot of ground, and
Yeah.
yet it feels cohesive, so it works.
That was, kind of the most challenging thing to do. And I think the ordering of the poems, just like maybe the ordering of an album, you know thinking about that, which is maybe not always the same that you would do with fiction with like a whole novel,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you think of organization, of course, but that was, I had to do that really carefully to make sure that these kind of different threads that are coming together really do come together in a cohesive way. So I'm looking forward to having the manuscript out there so you can read all of them together.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Fantastic. So, Mike,
Mike.
so this novel, and I've had the pleasure of reading at least most of it. I don't know about all, but you wrote your last novel came out a few years ago, and then you've been working on all kinds of different projects. So like when how did this come to you, this story? Because it's a very unique story. I mean, we got a glimpse of that tonight, but there's so much crazy stuff that happens after this. It's like, where does this, how much of Derek is Mike Belanger, and and like where did this come from, and what at what point did you say, okay, this is the one I'm going to concentrate on and finish and put out there in the world?
Well, I mean, one, it's about escape. We all like escapes, and we escaped to Lord of the Rings, we escaped to Harry
That's
Potter.
right.
So, I guess in that way, this book was an escape for me. I am a teacher, I am a husband, I am a father to a 2-year old, and so my writing became an escape for me, not in a bad way because I love my life, but it's a different avenue of my life that I get to explore when I write. So this novel started out completely differently, as I think, like Katie was talking about, you kind of see your work more clearly as you keep writing.
Right.
So it started out completely differently, and as I was writing, it kind of took this weird turn into fantasy. And I've always dreamed of writing a fantasy. I never felt confident enough because you have to make up words for everything. You have to name, people, funny things, and I it was a challenge that I wasn't, I didn't know if I was up to the task as a writer. And then when I had the name Eldred Babel, wherever that came from, whatever
That's so good.
ether that came from, I felt like, okay, I have one funny name. And then the name Grimwell, of course, which felt really right away. It felt like a name that worked. Um, and so once I had a little bit of that, I just felt like I could keep going with it. So, the other thing is, like, my writing has really changed after having a child. I write really early in the morning. It's the only time I have to write. And I think there's a great advantage to that because I'm truly half awake sometimes when I'm writing. So when I get to write, it's like I feel like I'm a little bit more open to the weird, and I'm open to those turns. So, with Grimwell, right away I was really excited about it. So I would be up really early, and especially towards the end of last year when I was getting ready to submit to the Fairfield Book Prize, I was up at like 4:30 trying to get this world of Grimwell done.
Oh my
Um, so I think I credit that to, like, me, moving to this journey of Grimwell, and all the weird twists and turns that happen. I think in Derek, I am like him only in the sense that, he is a character that is always dreaming of how he could be a hero, and I feel like I've always had a little bit of that in me. Like I was also a barista. I worked at
God.
Starbucks, and so I had
So
written a novel about a teenager who likes history. I'd written a novel about a high school history teacher. I only have limited jobs to choose from, so I had that to choose from, a barista, and then, so I think he's like me in that sense. But what happens to Derek is obviously way off the beaten path.
Yeah, that's
That's so
very true.
great.
Very true. So yeah, this is great, and so uh, we were talking before we got to on the air, so to speak, about the Fairfield Book Prize, and I see that Chris Madden is out there. So, and
Hey,
you asked
hey,
that
Chris
question. So,
Madden.
okay, when is this going to be decided? Who exactly is deciding this? Is it Chris
Who's the
Madden?
guest
By the way,
judge? Does anybody
can
have like the
you give us any info about when the Fairfield Book Prize announcement will be made, etc.? Because we inquiring minds want to know.
we're at the edge of our seats.
But in any case, yes. So, um,
It's
Katie,
weird being like on the receiving end of the questions and not like, dishing them out totally. It's funny.
right?
Yeah, because even when we do our readings, like we're, asking each other questions, I'm a little bit more in the
Yeah, you're in the
seat.
questioning mode.
Yeah.
Katie, I want to ask you about your formalist um, poetry. This is your bag, right? It's your deal. Kim Bridgeford was the
The
queen.
queen, the American queen. There's some kind of fabulous article that calls her like the American queen of formalism. So, I mean, I need to be really careful saying because, I have such great we have such great formalist poet friends who were like always writing in form. I
Yeah.
would say that my poem is like my poetry is form informed.
Ooh,
That's if that makes sense. It's kind of silly. I
formalist
do
adjacent.
form adjacent, yes. I think every poet is considering, all right, the line length and rhythm, the sounds of words, and also how you're going to read that, right? So I do have a bit of a rhyme scheme going in Prayer at 32, but we do have a form in the poem Pity, um and a little bit less in From the Winter Evening Woods. In Pity, that is a ghazal, where there are specific, there's a specific number of syllables per line, and the each couplet ends with the same word or the same rhyming sound. So that's why you hear me say pity so many times. And in a ghazal, each of the couplets should be, I've heard it described as like a string of pearls, like they go together on a necklace, but each one is sort of its own. It's sort of its own meditation. Pity was the first ghazal I ever wrote, and I'm sitting there like 1, 2, 3, the syllables. So I'm not at Kim Bridgeford's level, but I knew she'd be proud of that poem if she were around. And I'd say I am pretty thoughtful of form, the shape of my poems, and rhythm and rhyme
Yeah.
always. But I'm especially proud that I did write a ghazal and a half. The second one doesn't
Oh,
follow all the rules.
that's a new. You got to come up with a new term for that. Well,
I
I
know.
know the Trump poem, in which he's never named,
Yeah,
is very um, sort of musical in the sort of almost Dr. Seuss sense of like very
the repetition of the word
very
pity. Yeah,
ba-dum,
yeah.
ba-dum, ba-dum, right, and which totally works for that
Nice.
poem, because it's you're dealing with almost like a character from a cartoon,
This
so
like super evil buffoon. I mean,
yeah,
I could go off, but
yeah,
you know.
that was really interesting. But before we do anything else, here we have Chris Madden. We're also eagerly awaiting the winner from the guest judge,
Hmm.
the mysterious guest
The
judge. It
mysterious
could
guest
be
judge.
this month. It will definitely be prior to the Fumfa residency, which is in
Thank you
mid-July.
for that update, Chris Madden from Woodhall Press, our dear friend who's been on the show before.
That's right. We're
Oh,
oh,
we have the judge,
Hmm.
Griselle Acosta. Very excited.
okay. That's very cool. All right.
Very, very awesome. Well, thank you so much for asking about that, Chris. And I do hope
Sure.
to write in more forms and give more forms a try. But thank you so much for noticing that about pity. It really it centers around Trump, but it also kind of speaks to narcissism, this experience of just being
Sure.
bullied in the world, and a bit about Christian hypocrisy as well, kind of swirling around that image of Trump. So yeah.
Yeah. So, Mike Grimwell, were there any? I mean, the world of Grimwell has a kind of a Lord of the Rings, Hobbit quality to it. The Grimkins in this world, but overall, there's also this contemporary, realistic. It at least starts out that way, and the combination of those two things is really interesting. Did you have any novels that you've read that kind of served as your guideposts, to this kind of combination?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really interested in like the novel within a novel for a while. Like Anthony Horowitz does a really great job with that with murder mysteries.
Uh-huh.
He'll write a murder mystery within a murder mystery, and
Cool.
somehow the two connect. So I'm always like interested
Oh,
in how you can make that connection as a writer. It also, I think, as a writer, it lets you, not commit to one thing. So with me, like in the morning, I have this menu of options of which I can go to. I don't have to be in one world. And so you can kind of, it's almost easier novel to write in some ways and harder in the other, because you always have, whether a Grimwell chapter or a real chapter, you always have those two to play with one another. And I think it's just an intellectual, challenge too. It's really, difficult to, like make the two interconnect perfectly. And it's almost like a murder mystery. You have to have all the pieces connect. I felt like
Right.
the same way when I was doing Grimwell. I had to make Derek's story parallel Grimwell, but not too much. It had to be
Right.
just the right amount of connection.
Right.
So I thought it was a really interesting, and fun challenge to do in my morning writing sessions. And I saw
That's
my
awesome.
sister just asked, will we get more romance with Kat?
Oh, sorry.
Absolutely. It becomes a love story as well as a fantasy novel, and that becomes a
Yay!
major part of the novel too.
I
It's
love
nice
that.
that you're tuning in.
Hey,
Yeah.
sis.
Great. So listen, Katie, I think we should go to our famous final question.
Our famous final
So
question.
I'm going to start with you, and so give us a pearl of wisdom, Katie. Some advice out there for the writers, the budding writers, the working writers, the writers who've been writing for a long time. Even we can all use some advice, and we can definitely use book recommendations. So give us one of those too.
Oh, for sure. I'm always asking this famous last double question, but when it comes to me, I'm like, oh my god, there's so much to say. So I'm going to choose just one pearl of wisdom. That I just want to encourage everybody who wants to write to just do it. And to know that, as whatever you're writing is coming out of you, it does not have to be perfect, just needs to hit the page and you can edit it later. Try not to bruise what is coming from you as you're writing it. That editing process, we're going to say, oh, this other stuff can come later, but please, honor that urge to write. And also know that even though writing can be solitary, and maybe we want it to be solitary, that's very satisfying private creative activity, that you don't have to be alone in your writing. And actually, writing community is so important. And as much as you want to, publish, there are communities of people who can help you do that. And there are ways beyond publishing that you can share your work with the world, like a live stream like this, like an in-person open mic, and other writing communities that are online and in person. So you can get connected and you can share, through a reading, through an open mic, through publishing, through all different kinds of publishing. Just make sure that you're getting out there and writing. Don't stop yourself from doing it. And there is a community out there for you. That was like several pearls, but
All right,
I lost control of myself.
it was a pearl necklace.
It was a pearl necklace.
And a book recommendation. Give us.
Okay, so I know I've recommended this one before, but it really still connects so much to my style. I mean, I want to recommend all of our friends and guests who have been on here, especially the other finalists. Please get out there and Google and follow Meg Keisha McGovern, Stacey O'Connor, Michael Belanger, and John Clark, who has not done a reading online with us, and myself. Please, check out their other amazing works, and do, watch for the winner, watch for, and whoever is not the winner, please make sure you're supporting them so they can get these incredible manuscripts published. But I do have a very specific book I want to recommend. This is a particular translation of Rilke's Book of Hours.
Nice.
And there's sort of like disagreements about how people feel about these translations. I am not part of the disagreements. I haven't gotten involved in those. All I can say is that I really love the way these are translated. Basically, they turn these pieces that Rilke wrote, these poems, into kind of these very gorgeous lyrical free verse poems, which is not exactly how he wrote them. Maybe that's where the disagreement comes in.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love them. They are sort of these a way of capturing and thinking about the divine that is very different than, just kind of a retelling of a biblical narrative. It's very powerful, very beautiful. So Rilke's Book of Hours, and the translators are Anita Barrows and Joanna Macy. Really incredibly good.
Yeah, real good. Rilke's awesome.
Thank you.
This is
Michael Belanger.
This is the hardcover version. I think the paperback is different uh, design. But anyway, everybody should check that out. But
Thanks.
Mike, a little pearl of wisdom and a book recommendation.
I think Kay had a great one with you can easily say you don't have enough time to write, but I think if you carve a half an hour, 20 minutes a day, it really builds on itself. Like that was my goal with writing Grimwell. Like, could I still write a novel with having a child? And
Right.
I did a little bit every morning, and after a year, it turns into a whole book. So, yeah, gradually, I think that's a great pearl of wisdom. And a book recommendation. I love the Anthony Horowitz series. I mentioned it, so I'll just give him a
Yes.
plug. His first book, The Magpie Murders, he does exactly what I tried to do with putting a novel within a novel, and it's really awesome. So,
That
Excellent.
is so cool, Michael Belanger. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us this evening. One more round of applause for all of our finalists, and especially Mike Belanger and me.
And Catherine E.
Oh my
Schmidt.
God, I feel so bad like saying that about myself. So one more time for Meg Keisha McGovern, Stacey O'Connor, John Clark, Michael Belanger, and myself. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and enjoying these readings. Good luck to all of our friends, and we'll be super excited to find out the winner real soon. But all of these manuscripts are incredible, and it's just a matter of time before they're published. That's what we always say. Just
The word
incredible.
must be said. Even those whose manuscripts do not win this prize doesn't mean anything. It's you've made it this far. These books will find a home.
Absolutely. We have like 1,000,000% faith in that.
But anyway, yes, thanks, guys.
yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Thanks.
Thank
As
you so
always,
much, Michael Belanger. Join us next week, Chris,
yes,
with
next week, Sandra Marchetti and Maya Rose will be here. It'll be an awesome night.
and sign up for the open mic on June 23rd, everyone. Thank you so much once again, and have a good night.